Karina, thank you so much for being on the show today. This has been a long time coming.
Well, Robin, I am so excited to be here. And you're right, it has been a long time coming.
We've been talking about this. I've known Karina now for about a year, and we are both a part of the Senior Home Coach program that we've talked about on this show before. And I've just wanted to have her on the show, and we've just kind of missed each other and done a few things. So here we are. I've got her locked down in front of a microphone. So, Karina, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit, about, you're very highly degreed and all those sorts of things. So give us an idea of kind of who you are, and then we're going to get to this book and talk about your book.
Okay, so I'm a gerontologist. My background is I have a PhD in health promotion and gerontology. And I did write the book, Longevity Blueprint for Health, Wealth, and Purpose. But a little bit about my background that people are always curious about is, where did it start? How did I get here, right? Well, if you can imagine, I am a senior in high school when my mother gets a call from my grandfather saying, we could really use some help with grandma. Can you all move back? Well, at the time we're living in Mexico City, and my dad is one of the top people in the government's milk industry. And there's no way that we can move back, right?
Right.
But I was tired of living in Mexico City because every time we went to school in the morning, it'd take 15 minutes to get there and 2 hours to get back home in the afternoon. And I'm like, oh, I don't think this is quality of life. So the moment my grandfather gave this opportunity to move to San Marcos, Texas, live with them, be able to help with my grandmother, I thought, oh, this can't be any harder than helping my mom with my little brother Douglas, who was 9 years younger than I am. I mean, how hard can it be, right?
How hard can it be?
And at 18 years old, you have absolutely no clue what you're getting yourself into.
It just all sounds good and a big adventure. It's a big adventure.
Exactly. That's what I thought. Get away from my parents, get away from a big city, live in this small town. The university's not far away. I can attend there. This is going to be amazing. I love my grandparents. I'm going to get to spend more time with them. And I had this fantasy of what it was going to be like. And I think most caregivers have no clue what they're getting themselves into. And I certainly at 18 had no idea what was going to happen. I will fast forward a little bit, and what ended up happening was 3 months after I got there, I've been helping with grandma and everything. This one day I decided, I'm kind of tired. I'm going to go back home and take a nap. So I took a nap in the sunroom, which I normally never did. And I woke up to hearing, help, help. And of course, at first I thought I was not hearing right. And then I heard it again. Now I'm wide awake. And so I followed this voice to the bathroom. And it turns out that my grandfather had fallen in the bathroom. Now, at the moment, I didn't know that he had had a stroke, but he did. He had a stroke, which is what caused him to fall in the bathroom. Got him up off the bathroom floor, took him to bed, and I thought, oh, it's going to be okay. Well, it wasn't. He had a stroke that caused him to end up in a wheelchair and also caused a speech impediment. Well, now I'm taking care of two people. And 3 days after that, I turned 19.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Welcome to caregiving, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And
That's
so that
crazy.
was definitely not something that I was expecting to happen in my life or even in their life. But that's the way caregiving happens, is you never imagine. It just falls in your lap and you don't know anything about it. And all of a sudden you're expected to take all this action. And there's this whole ecosystem around you that you're not even,
you didn't even know existed
about what is there, or where do you start, or what does this look like, and how do you juggle? And there's just all these things. And on top of that, there's that emotional aspect of seeing this, in my grandfather's case, a 6'5" man suddenly being in a wheelchair, and I knew it was killing him. I mean, he did not like it at all, but it was what it was, right? I mean, he wasn't going to get up ever again. He did live for another almost 3 years after that, but it was, constantly in the wheelchair, constantly having to help him. The thing, though, that I will tell you that I loved about him was his attitude about all of it. Because, as a young 19, 20-year-old, there's always those days when you wake up and you want to have a bad day. You just
you just choose to have a bad day.
I just want to be inside myself. It's me. And I would go to the kitchen, and he'd either be there or roll in right after I got there. And I would say, "Hey, Papa Coke, how are you doing?" And he would say, "Well, I'm not as young as I used to be, but I'm still smiling." And when he said that, it was like any problem that I had just had to melt away.
Yeah, you're like, doggone it.
Okay, dang, now I cannot be angry today. I can't have a pity party today, right? And so, it put everything back into perspective. And there were so many lessons that I learned, but it was very emotional, right? I mean, because you see these people who have been pillars in your life suddenly now they're dependent on you for different things, and it happened overnight. In the case of my grandfather, in the case of my grandmother, it was a little bit more gradual because that's the nature of Alzheimer's. It's gradual. Sure. But most people don't realize what all it entails to become this caregiver. No. And obviously at 19, I had no clue, no idea.
I was 62 and I had no clue.
Right.
And I didn't even have to do as much as you did at 19. Right. But like you said, people have, it's not like you grow up and say, one day I'm going to be, and even if you do say, I'll be there to take care of my parents or my grandparents, you really have no idea what that's going to entail because you don't know. Are they going to have a stroke? Are they going to have Alzheimer's? Are they going to be fine but lose certain function? I mean, there's no planning.
There is no way to plan, and there is no manual out there, right? And then, fast forward several years, I get married, and my first husband ends up with a blood clotting disorder. So now I'm living the caregiver as a spouse of somebody who is in and out of the hospital every few months. Every 10 or 11 months, his body becomes resistant to the medication he's on. We even went through a situation in which they told us there's no more medications we can give him. And, waiting and finding out, they just released a new drug. Oh, but wait, insurance may not cover it. And when they did tell us how much I was supposed to cover myself, it was 3/4 of my income before taxes, by the way. So
oh my goodness.
It was just these impossible situations that I've gotten to experience and be a part of. Fast forward another, I'd say 15 years, then I'm caregiving for my mother after my dad left us. He had a stroke, and she was suffering from severe depression apparently even before my father passed. And so it was learning to deal and caregive for somebody in that situation. So I've done it as a as a granddaughter, as a spouse, and as a adult child.
I think you I think you are more than qualified. So I could write a book about things that people, if you'd only had so many of these things, it might have been a little easier.
I know. So I've had all of these experiences. Mine is not just book knowledge, right?
Yeah.
It really is lived experiences. And then I've seen other people going through the same situation. And my biggest angst about all of this is I don't want to see families have one medical crisis that becomes a generational financial crisis. So that's what drove me to write the book, is to try to put all the knowledge that I gained into somewhat of a story, somewhat of a plan that made sense, and a way to walk people through. How do I plan for what I don't know is going to happen? Because some people will be successful agers. They won't have any problems till they just don't wake up one day. Or like my grandfather will have a stroke, or like my uncle will have a fall, or like my grandmother will end up with Alzheimer's, like my mom fight 5 battles with cancer. So you don't know what life's going to give you, but there still are some basics about planning and communicating your wishes and your desires so that you can make sure that your family knows what decisions you would want made for you when you're no longer able to communicate those. Because if you don't communicate them, you better believe me that they're going to do everything in their power to save you. But many people will not ask the question, what am I saving them for? What will their quality of life be? because we want mom and dad around forever, but that's not a reality. You know, my grandfather, you know, he had a stroke, he survived a stroke, and there wasn't anything trying to, like, we didn't have to revive him and then he ended up in the wheelchair. No, he that's just what happened as a result of his stroke.
The result of the stroke, right. Yeah.
But my father, on the other hand, he did arrive at the hospital in respiratory arrest. They resuscitated him after 20 some plus minutes, but for better for worse, he was brain dead. Of course, we didn't know that for 4 days, but we had to wait for his body to naturally pass. We couldn't decide to, I guess, unplug him, right? I mean, in Mexico, there is no DNRs. There is no ability to choose. You have to let nature run its course. Luckily, it ran its course pretty quickly. But all of those things are really hard decisions, right? And hard conversations to have as family members of, you know, what do we do? Luckily for my dad, we didn't really have a choice as to what the decision was. And we had to let, you know, like I said, nature run its course. But here in the U.S., we do have the ability to make these choices. Yeah. And the choice should be the individual's choice, not left to the children who will then bear that burden for the rest of their lives. They'll always wonder, should I? Should I have done that? Or should I have done this other thing? We need to make these decisions ourselves. Is that what they wanted?
Is that what, is that what Dad would have wanted?
Yeah, exactly. And the problem, Robin, is that we're making decisions like this, if we don't plan ahead, in a moment of crisis. Well, we know that anytime there's a moment of crisis, our brains are not at 100%. Our emotions are going to be overriding reason, and we're going to want to save them at all costs, even though their quality of life is going to be horrible, right? Yeah. In some cases. I mean, in some cases, they're going to come back. Everything's going to be great, right? But talking the worst case scenario, at some point in time, we have to ask the question, are we extending their life or are we extending the death process?
Right.
That's a hard question to ask when you're emotional.
Yes. And sometimes even the individual, it's a tough question for them as well, right? I remember when my father, his cancer came back, and he was and this is after he'd done surgeries and all the things, and he was in the hospital, and the PA, not the surgeon, but his PA who did more, you know, the bedside stuff, actually said to him, she said, instead of thinking about your quality of life, how do you want your quality of death to go?
Right.
And my dad in the moment did not remember that question. I was the only one in the room that really heard her ask that. And it was several weeks later, I reminded him of that conversation. And so I was able to ask him questions.
Right.
Right. And when you say your quality of death, really what that means is, where do you want to die? Right? I mean, it was inevitable. My father had accepted it. We knew he didn't have long with us. He had pancreatic cancer. We knew that, you know, our time with him was short. And we were able to have these conversations so that, you know, some of the things that we were able to do for him, we could do that he wanted, and some things weren't, just because that's just the way things go. But we knew, right? And he was somebody that, with me and my sister and his wife, he made good plans. They aged very smartly, if that's a word, because they had all the ducks were in a row, right?
Right.
But not everybody does that.
That's right.
And I think that's where this is a big book, y'all. Okay, this is a big book. It's like, you know, we've called it a textbook, we've called it a workbook, we've called it a step-by-step book, but that's really what it is. I'm trying to show some of it here on the camera. But tell us about this book, Karina. Tell us, you know, why it's written the way it is, and how one can approach something like that's this big.
Yes. So it is big, right? I mean, it is like a textbook, but you're right. One of the things that I wanted to make sure of is, you know, I don't know about you, but I've read some amazing books in my life, and I've highlighted and I've put sticky notes, and I've said, you know what, I'm going to come back to that and I'm going to integrate it in my life. And then you don't.
You have the
And so
smartest
what I did
bookshelf
with
in the world.
I don't know if you can
your,
see,
your
but I mean, there
bookshelf.
are different activities to do. There are questions that I ask throughout the book. So I stop after making key points and I say, okay, how does this apply to you? What do you want to do for XYZ, right? So depending on the chapter you're on, there's going to be lots of questions for you to think about your life, because ultimately I want to do a couple of things through the book. I want you to create a blueprint and understand that there is a trajectory of aging. And aging doesn't mean you have to become frail, because that is
Right.
not a condition of aging.
Right.
You may slow down some, you may lose some elasticity, but it does not have to end up in a situation which you're frail, bedridden, and so on. But it's all based on the lifestyle choices that you made, as well as the genes that you were blessed with. So it's a combination of things.
Sure.
And I want to empower people to understand that and to be able to make different choices, because you don't know how many people start working out for the first time at 55 and 65 and completely change the trajectory of the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
It's amazing what they can achieve. And it's all about committing to yourself, because, all of us have heard, oh, you got to save enough money for retirement. Okay. How many of us have heard you need to save this body for retirement, right? Instead, What do? Robin, we chase a career, we sit at our desk 20, 30, 40, 60 hours. Our computer kids now, our young people that are all these programmers making phenomenal advances for us, are spending 60 or more hours sitting at their computer. They're not exercising.
Yeah.
I say the sitting is the new smoking, because it does reduce the quality of the life that you have for the rest of your life. So you got to get up, you got to keep moving. And that's a real important thing that we have lost. Now, we can get it back at any point in time. In fact, one of the things that I talk a lot about is the concept of micro exercising. So
Okay.
that is a really simple concept. Think about what would happen if every time that you stood up out of your chair, you would sit back down, stand up, sit and stand 3 times, 3 to 5 times. What you're essentially doing if you do that is you're doing 3 to 5 squats every time you stand up. Well, people stand up minimum 20 times a day. So now all of a sudden, if you did 3 of them every time you stood up, you would be basically doing 60 additional squats every day. Imagine what that would do to your leg muscles and how healthy that would keep you over time. If you did that consistently, it adds up tremendously. Or even if you're only able to walk for 5 minutes at a time, walk for 5 minutes at a time, 5 or 6 times a day. That gets you to 30 minutes of walking. And then add 1 minute to it. It doesn't seem like adding 1 minute would have that big of an impact, but it does, because today you add 1 minute and next week you add another and the following week and so on. And in, a few weeks, now you're walking 15 to 30 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be, neuroscience type of difficulty, right? It's very simple.
I think so often we are we're an all or nothing. We're such an all or nothing society, right? If I can't walk a mile, why should I even try?
Exactly.
And so they feel like they can't walk a mile, so then I just can't do it.
Right.
And they don't think it's going to impact in the, that walking to the mailbox and back makes a difference, or walking down the street to the corner and back makes a difference. And it does, because now you walk to the neighbor's house and back, and then the next neighbor's back, and you just keep doing that. And then next thing you know, you're walking that mile.
Exactly. And once you start doing that, to me, it breeds a whole lot of different momentum with it, right? Because you start to feel better. You start to feel like, oh, wow, I really can change. I really can improve. And, there's this whole myth of you can't lose weight after 50. No, yes, you can. The problem is by 50, we have lost so much muscle mass that our resting metabolic rate is lower. So it
Right.
seems like everything we eat just goes to our thighs. It doesn't. It
It
doesn't.
sure
What
feels
we
like
need
it
to do is
sometimes.
we need to make sure we're getting enough protein and that we're doing some heavy weightlifting and building back up our muscle mass
Yeah.
because that's how we increase our metabolic rate. And then over time, that's going to help keep you healthier. It's going to produce some weight loss. So it doesn't have to be rocket science, right? I mean, they say a
Right.
pound is 3,600 calories. Well, even if you reduced 100 calories a day in 36 days, you would lose a pound. You know?
And that's
Most
a
of us
good,
don't have
you
that
know,
kind of patience. We want instant gratification, and that's our problem, right?
right.
But, you know, it's the tortoise and the hare.
Yeah.
Just consistency. And that's all you need to do is be consistent. And so when I wrote the book, I thought about all the health behavior theories and what it is that changes people's behavior. And not only, you know, me wanting to go on a 30-day diet, but really making a lifestyle change because that ultimately is what it is. And so we have goal setting, and I think goal setting is great. But better than goal setting is changing your identity, right? Because if I
What
think
do you
of
mean by
myself
that?
as a couch potato or, you know, inactive person, then I'm not very likely to succeed to be continuous on an exercise program. But if I see myself as a healthy ager, then I'm going to be more likely to start adopting healthier behaviors, move more, think about, you know, what I'm eating more, because all of that comes into play. Now, in the
Yeah.
book, I focus more on, you know, the move it or lose it side of it. And I don't say so much about nutrition because nutrition is so unique to different people. We all eat
Yeah.
different things depending on our culture, depending on how we were brought up. And at the end of the day, it ends up being a mathematical equation, right? Calories in, calories out, more calories in, you get put on weight, calories out, exceed calories in, you lose weight. It's simple.
Yeah. It's
right?
just math.
And it's just math. But here's what happens. If you get moving, you start feeling better. You start feeling better, you start feeling better about yourself, not only physically, but now higher confidence, happier. And all of a sudden you're like, you know what? I'm going to choose to eat that healthier meal instead of that, you know, those chocolates that I was self-medicating on, right? And so it starts to snowball in this direction of making healthier lifetime choices. And so the book is written to really focus on starting people off with what is your passion and your purpose? Because if you don't know your why, then nothing's going to drive you to get a better lifestyle, right?
And I think too, just on that point too, is I think a lot of people, they kind of stop thinking about the why once they get past, well, my kids are raised, you know, they're on their own, they've got their own families, I'm no longer working, so they struggle with their why, you know, okay, what am I going to do? You know, I watched my parents get old and get, you know, they were on walkers or, you know, so I'm guessing that's the path I'm going to go down unless they make conscious decisions to say, I'm going to be mobile in my 80s and be able to walk unassisted. And that is my intention. Or I am going to travel the world throughout my 70s and 80s, and I'm going to make sure I'm capable of doing that. So,
right. And you have the ability to make those choices and change the trajectory of your life by every day taking steps towards creating a better you. And the only person who's going to do that for you is you.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
So
yep.
You're the only one that's getting in your own way of a better life. And so the book is written to help you understand what typically happens during aging, the different stages in the projection, the trajectory of aging, the kinds of things that you may need when you're in different phases of it, so that you have an idea of what can happen. But I'm hoping that through reading the book and participating in the activities, that you will be able to create this blueprint or blue plan that's going to take you to a healthier you. You're going to have all of your documents and affairs and orders. And oh, by the way, those are not to wait till I'm 65 or 70 to put these things into place. No, you should have them in place when you were 18. Otherwise, you go out, have a car wreck, mom and dad can't help you make any decisions over your medical situation, right? And so this is not old age stuff. This is
life adult stuff.
101.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
It is. And I think that's a good point too, because we look at this and we know you're a gerontologist, and I know you through the senior, working with seniors, but truthfully, this starts now. And wherever your now is, are you 18? It starts now. Are you 30? It starts now. Are you 60? It starts now. Right?
Yeah.
Because, and again, you've got so many stories and things in here, and I would think that if I'm going through this and I'm filling out the exercises, right? What else do you hope to focus on during the semi-independence phase, right? So now you've got things written down, whether it's goals or messages to family, and then you get into some of like your aging in place. Where do you want to live as you age? Or what are some of your medical wishes? And now they're written somewhere. And if you share this with your adult children, your grandchildren, your sisters, your brothers, your siblings, your friends, or whomever is in your life, then they're going to go, oh, wait, Robin has all this stuff written down. Let's go get the book off the shelf. Let's take it off the shelf, the very smart bookshelf that we have, because we've got all those books that you mentioned that are highlighted but not come down. So your bookshelf is real smart. And let's go look and see what Robin wanted.
Right. And Robin, there is a whole chapter on how do I communicate with my family too. Because for a lot of people, that's difficult as well, Yeah. I know what my wishes are, but some of those conversations are difficult to have with your adult kids. Yeah. Telling them I want to be cremated or I want to be, buried and where. And if you don't write these things down, there's a possibility that that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to communicate and make these choices for you, and then just give them an instruction book for them to follow.
And it will be so much easier for your family. It's so much easier for the people, like you said at the beginning, when things happen, like a stroke with your grandfather, right?
Yep.
You just came home and happened to take a nap and then wake up and this has happened. It's not like, there was any forewarning on something like that. I've got a friend who at 62, her husband had 4 strokes in a row at 62 on Christmas Eve. Certainly nobody expected that, right? And she instantly, her and her children, and caregiving and learning about all these things. So you don't know. And he, it affected his speech and his mobility and all the things, right? So having this so that if you can't communicate, they know that they are doing the best they can with what you wanted.
Yes. And then there's even things that are maybe, how do I say this? So let's say, for example, you can't communicate and I'm having to feed you. And I think, given the fact that you now have swallowing issues and, all of these things that happen, we need to give you softer foods. So now I'm thinking I'm going to give you oatmeal because that's pretty nutritious and it sounds reasonable. I can put some apples in it and cinnamon and fix it up really great. And you just refuse to eat it. Now I'm thinking, you're just being difficult. But here's the deal. You never liked oatmeal. Ever. Never. So you're not being difficult. You never liked oatmeal. But
you just don't like oatmeal.
Communicate it with me.
Yeah.
So we're now stuck in a standoff situation. You can't tell me you don't like it. I'm telling myself all sorts of stories about why you're being difficult. And I'm getting frustrated at you. You're getting frustrated at me. And now our relationship is suffering because of something that we could have so easily avoided if I had a list of the things I love and the things you should never feed me.
And so do you want to get in an argument and relationships strained over oatmeal?
Yes. Or as simple as, how do I like my coffee? Or other things like, you know, if you know
it's
your
everything,
parent is
isn't it?
in the last couple of years of their life and they want to eat pie and ice cream, okay, what is going to happen? What's the worst thing that can happen if they want to eat pie and ice cream? Oh, their blood sugar is going to go up. Okay, do we have insulin,
right.
or do we have diabetes? If they don't have diabetes, then who cares? If they have
Yeah.
diabetes and insulin can counteract it, talk to the doctor about what needs to happen so you can do that. No, it's not the best choice, but it is their choice, and they're adults and they have the ability to make that choice. And if it costs them a month or a year of their life and they're no longer sitting in that wheelchair for a year, should we be happy for them instead of saying, you know, oh, I wish they would have paid attention and eaten better? Well,
Yeah.
you know, that would have happened 40 years ago, not in the last 2 years.
Right.
Save
right.
yourself the angst of dealing with your parents in a negative way and be able to enjoy them and be the child that you are, because you are feeling that loss ahead of time. Before they're even gone, you're thinking
Yeah.
about, I'm going to miss them, I'm going to lose them. And this is what's driving you to try to fix things, because people like to fix things.
Well, we
can't
do. We
fix
want
it
to
all.
fix things. We want to make them feel better. We want to make sure that they, you know, they remember who we are or who dad is or all these things. And I think what we forget is as we age, and again, you said so much of it is decisions we made 40 years ago or more, and maybe the genetics that are running through, you know, so much is out of our control, right? It's just the genetics. And you said it, and it's like just meeting them where they are and knowing what their choices would have been if they could have told you that choice today.
Exactly.
And
so
having
by
the conversations and
Yeah.
I just think it's so important, and people don't want to have these conversations. And I think sometimes a book like this makes it easier. Like if I want to have that conversation with you, my daughter, but you want nothing to do with it. You don't want to talk about me getting old, and you don't want to talk about me possibly not being able to communicate the way I can today. But I'm going to do this anyway because I want you to know. And if you don't want to talk to me about it today, just know this book exists. And you need to go get it. Just know it exists in my house, and I've done some things here, and I want you to go read that when and if the time should show itself.
Absolutely. And in the meantime, too, it gives you so much information about what you can do now to change your life later.
Yes.
And I hope it encourages people to feel like no matter where they're at, they can still have a better tomorrow, and that they can choose every day to improve their own personal selves to become better tomorrow.
Yeah.
And certainly there are people who've had strokes that may never get out of the wheelchair, but you can still lift cans or gallon jugs and continue to try to do things to keep your cardiovascular health better, because every time you do that, you increase the quality of your life.
Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful kind of just a good sentiment that nothing is, you know, I mean, and I say this as 62-year-old, able-bodied, healthy individual, but it's not over till it's over.
Right.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
It's not over till it's over. And, you know, whether it's, I had a woman told me a story about how this husband would go see his wife in a memory care, and it frustrated him because he said, she just doesn't remember me. I don't even know why I come. And she started humming this song. You remember the song, A Bushel and a Peck? I love you, a bushel and a peck. And she said, what is that song she's humming? He goes, oh, we used to dance to that, and we used to kind of sing that to each other in the kitchen. And she said, you know, she only hums that when you're in the room.
Oh.
So she knew who he was. She knew that relationship, even though he couldn't see it. Now he understood that even though that relationship was difficult for him, she still knew she loved him.
Right.
And so that's what I mean by some of these things that we don't understand what happens with our loved ones as they age. And sometimes maybe reading some of these things and knowing what their favorite flower is and knowing that they hate the color purple and that oatmeal is just something so gross for them. And or if you put cream in my coffee, I'm going to hate every minute of that. Just knowing those makes it all better for everybody.
It does. It makes a huge difference in the quality of life that they have for however long they have left, right?
And it's your quality of life too, because now you go see mom and she's happy because you took the purple curtains down that you thought were beautiful, but she hated them.
Well, and just like you were telling the story about the woman that hummed the song, right? There's also a story out there about a man who showed up every day to have a first date with his wife because she couldn't remember, but he brought her a rose every time. He dressed up. He, made sure that they put out a table with a tablecloth and they sat in her room and he wheeled her up and they had a first
That's
date.
Awesome. That's amazing.
For years. Right?
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing. And so we have to meet people where they're at.
Right.
Like one of the things that breaks my heart is when somebody says, "Oh, when will my husband be home? When will your dad be home?" And dad passed away 5 years ago. And now you tell mom, "Well, don't you remember dad passed away 5 years ago?" Okay.
Now
she relives the moment of finding out that her husband died. Don't do that.
Over and
Instead,
over
say,
and over.
They'll be home, in a little while. And then change the conversation to something else, because someone with a dementia or an Alzheimer's like that in a few minutes is going to completely forget that they asked. And it is okay. It is perfectly fine to be kind to your loved one. And there are other things that you can do too. Like, for example, as they start having problems speaking and gathering their thoughts, because one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that many times when you're talking to an older person and they're having a hard time answering, it's because they need to process longer than you and I do.
Yeah.
And so it may take them up to 90 seconds before they process that and are able to respond to you. But what happens if you repeat the question in the middle of those 90 seconds is you reset the clock. And so now you've asked mom 4 or 5 times the exact same question in the last minute and reset the clock multiple times, and now they're frustrated. Now it's all jump. And the worst part about it is that people think, "Oh, I'll say it this way, and then next time I'll say it slightly different, and next slightly different." That's totally confusing. It does this in their brain.
Big mess.
And so the best thing to do is either to ask and wait, or maybe you're at the point where having some flashcards with some images that are easy, or a page that has maybe an image of somebody eating, somebody going, maybe a bathroom, maybe a bed, and they can point to, are you feeling hungry, or do you need any of these? And it could be a glass of water. It can be, food. And then if they point to the food, maybe you have another card that has, vegetables, fruits, or, meat or bread, and they can,
or God forbid, oatmeal.
Because they can point and process much better than speech. So what we have to understand is when people learn a language, they learn visually mostly first, right? They're able to read, they're able to identify the words, and the last thing they learn is speech, being able to talk in full sentences. And so if we're losing our cognitive ability to process, then being able to look at an image and point at it, it's going to be much faster than me saying, "I'm hungry," or "Yes, I want the glass of water." And so we can, as family members, recognize where our family member is and be able to start thinking about using some of those aids. But the problem, Robin, is nobody really is talking about these things. And as a caregiver, you don't know and you're not prepared.
No, you're not
prepared. It's a challenge.
And it's a challenge. You're not a doctor. You're not in the medical field at all. So you're relying on finding the other people to help you explain to you really what's happening. you're very frustrated. They get frustrated. Everybody's frustrated. And there's no, I'm going to tell you, the resources are difficult out there. It is hard to find the resources that we need as a caregiver, or even for ourselves if we see things going one way or the other, or we want to handle something or do something. Finding resources is not getting easier.
No, it's not. And Robin, recently they came out with the new statistics about the number of unpaid caregivers. So according to the AARP, now there's 63 million unpaid caregivers, right? And that really means like 1 in 4 people. But they also know that they're asking people, are you a caregiver, to get this information? No. But here's the problem. Most people are going to say no if they're doing things like, well, occasionally I take my mom to the grocery store, or I pick up groceries for my mom when I'm there so that she doesn't have to go. So I don't think of that as caregiving. I just think of that as being helpful to mom. But in truth, it is caregiving. Yeah. And so there really are many, many more caregivers out there than what it is that number is recognizing. And even the ones that are recognized, the average amount of hours is 27 hours. So if you're working 40 hours plus then 27 hours on top of that, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Did you know that a quarter of them are doing 40 hours or more on top of their full-time job?
On top of their own family?
And on top of their family. So you have a problem with the family, caregiver, work, and life balance. It used to be we talked a lot about work-life balance. Okay, now add family and caregiver to it, and it's a disaster. No wonder people are overworked, overstressed. And there are things that people don't know that could help them. So, for example, some states have money in the Medicare and Medicaid budget to be able to allow the person needing help to hire somebody. And they will allow them to have a choice in who they hire. They can hire a loved one to provide care. So depending on the state, it can range anywhere from starting at about $14, I think is the rate here in Texas. And in other states, it may be as high as $35. So you have to ask the questions. You have to be knowledgeable. Of course, the challenge is, what questions do we ask? Who do we ask?
Who do we ask?
Who do we ask?
Yeah. And it is. That is, that's the issue, right? Yeah. Who do we ask?
That's the issue. And so my beginning to solve this problem was writing this book. And now that I've written this book, and I still have plans to do other things with the book, like I want to develop a coaching program to go along with it. But I see that there is a need to write some additional books. So I am now in the process of trying to prioritize which book comes next, and how do I develop some online classes so that I can teach people a lot of this information. Because it is very difficult to find the information and to even know what you don't know. And that's the problem.
That's the problem, because all of a sudden you're thrust into this situation and you don't know what you don't know. And my mother is different than your mother And so what happened with you is not going to work for me. And and so it's all it's so individual. And I think that's also the thing that people don't understand. And so by using a tool like this book to write out some of the things that you already know as the individual, right? I already know A, B, C, D. So now if I leave this on the coffee table, if something were to happen to me, you can get that book and know what A, B, C, and D at a minimum.
Right.
Or what I'm looking at, or what I choose, or where I would tell you to go find whatever that information is. It's just still providing for your loved ones in a way that we don't talk about or we don't think about. And I think that's as much a legacy as the bank account.
Well, and Robin, I would tell people too, because, nationwide, there's only about half of the people who actually have a will or a trust or any kind of documentation.
Don't get me on that soapbox.
and it's a mess, right? I mean, it creates a mess for your loved ones. And I would say, if you love your family members, you need to take care of this business yourself, right? You need to start making plans for it. there's just no way around it. You have to face the fact that this is a task you need to get done, and the sooner you get it done, the better. And I tell people that it's important to go ahead and get it done now, because you don't know when your time's going to come. I can tell you the last thing I ever expected was to be married to somebody who at 22 years old got up out of bed and went down on all fours because the medication he was on had caused osteoporosis, and he had broken 2 vertebrae. And so he ended up wheelchair bound. This was my husband, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that was the last thing on our minds. And, that happened when he was, well, I guess his problem started at 22. By 25 was when he actually got up out of bed and had the broken vertebrae.
But that's 25 years old.
Exactly. And so
you don't know.
I use that as a story to illustrate that you never know. You never know what's going to happen. And so the best thing you can do is start putting this stuff together now. And I don't want people to be overwhelmed. I want people to be able to grab the book, work on it a little bit, set it aside, go on with their life, do the same thing again. And for example, when it comes to the things that you like, the foods you like or the foods you don't like, grab an empty notebook or grab some note cards. And as you go through your day and you're making breakfast, make a note. I had this. I like this. Oh, this reminded me that I don't like that. And start making the list right there and then on those note cards in that book. If you do this for 60 days, you're going to have a really good idea of what you like and what you don't like. And you won't feel overwhelmed because you're hitting it a minute here and there 3 times a day. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, it just feels overwhelming. So.
It does. Initially, it does feel overwhelming. But, that's one of the reasons in the book you will find stories, you will find questions, you will find good hard evidence and facts that support all the different aspects of aging and the decision making and, exercising, eating right, healthier habits, and so on.
Well, that's awesome. And I think, we've talked about so many different things that we've touched on. And, that's why I think, this book is so valuable, is because it does touch on all the things, and you can do it. You can look at the table of contents and you find, this, whatever subject interests you today, for you to go and read about, maybe take some notes and things like that. So it's not something that you need to sit down. There's not a final exam at the end of the week that you have to go through this. But at the same time, there is a final exam at one point, and you want to have as much of the project completed as possible.
Well, that is true. And, and I would remind people that plans change, right? I mean, every business, if they're going to be successful, has a business plan. But that business plan that they wrote 5-10 years ago is totally different today. So as your situation changes, as things happen in your life, because, you may have not exercised for the first 50 years of your life, and now you start taking it seriously, and now you've changed things, and now you've recognized that you value different things that you used to value 10 years ago. Well, it's time to go revisit and rewrite some of that part of it.
Yeah. And that's okay.
It is a living, breathing document. Yes. You are a living, breathing human being. Till the end, right?
Till the end. Until you're not.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Karina. We are going to have all the information on how they can purchase the book and reach out to you should they have questions or need you for anything at all. Karina is a wealth of knowledge. We could sit here half the day and keep talking about this, and she knows so much, and she's so giving of her knowledge. So make sure you reach out to Karina. I'm excited to see what kind of coaching programs and online classes and master classes and things like that you come up with, because I'm quite sure they will be phenomenal.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to making them available in the future, because I think there's such a huge need for that.
I think so too. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of Relax, I Got This, Embracing Life After 60. Make sure that you subscribe, share, do all the things so that we can continue to share all this very, very important information. And we'll see you next time on Relax, I Got This.